Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Actuary Podcast. I'm your host, Brock Talby, the Fantasy Football Actuary. We are less than 1 week away from Christmas. It is the holiday season, and I am off work next week, so I get to just enjoy the semifinal matchups this week. I get to enjoy football, some college basketball, take the whole week off work, enjoy even more sports, and then hopefully enjoy winning a championship next week over Christmas. We will start with the Thursday night throwback on this Saturday edition of the Fantasy Football Actuary podcast. It was a close game and it was pretty fun to watch. It was the Chargers versus the Raiders. Not near as much fun as the Monday night game against the Browns and the Ravens, but it was pretty good. At least it was close. It went into overtime. The biggest takeaways were one, Keenan Allen. So fantasy managers had a decision to make. It came out that Keenan Allen was going to be on a snap count. Should you play Keenan Allen? He's been so good. He got you to the championship. And then he looked into the camera and basically told fantasy managers, start me, don't sit me. And a lot of people fell prey to that. He ended with only 16 yards. He was not involved hardly at all. It was a snap count indeed. And the practice squad wide receivers that they moved up were way more involved. They made some big plays, caught a touchdown, and got some big yards. So Keenan Allen, disappointment. If you played Keenan Allen in your semifinal matchup, you are not off to a great start on Thursday night. The other big takeaway was Derek Carr. He went down early, and Marcus Mariota took over. If you remember, Mariota is the backup in Las Vegas. They paid him like $17 million or something to be the backup. So I think they brought him in initially to be kind of like a motivator for Derek Carr. Like he is a solid NFL quarterback. He's not top 10 or anything, but he's decent. So they brought him in to kind of push Carr, and he looked good in relief. Reports are that Carr has a significant groin injury, and he's looking at a multi-week recovery. If you didn't watch the game, the Raiders ended up losing. They drove down the field, got to the goal line, couldn't get the touchdown, kicked a field goal in overtime, and then the Chargers marched back down the field. Josh Allen capped it off with a rushing touchdown. So they lost, and it's going to be really hard for the Raiders to make the playoffs now. Their path to the playoff is very limited, so they can still make it. Technically, they're not out, but it's going to be really hard now. And Mariota's taking over. I don't think he's a downgrade to the offensive weapons at all. Darren Waller still had 150 yards and a touchdown, so keep rolling Darren Waller out there. Josh Jacobs was decent. He got 26 carries, which is a ton of carries, but he only turned that into 76 rushing yards. He did save his day with a rushing touchdown and another 35 receiving yards, so he had a good fantasy day, but 26 carries for only 76 rushing yards is not the kind of efficiency that you'd want to see from Josh Jacobs. The big takeaway was that he wasn't hampered by the ankle injury at all, and he still did get 26 carries, so you were rewarded for starting him. We'll move next into the NFL newsstand. First off, the COVID news, as always. Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin from the Baltimore Ravens were placed on the COVID list on Wednesday, but they were only close contacts, so they are expected to be available for tomorrow's game against the Jags. This is good news. If Lamar didn't have Marquise Brown, I would still be playing Lamar, obviously, but you saw in the Monday night game the big playability that Marquise Brown brings. He's the one that caught the 55-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter when Lamar came back in from dealing with cramps. And he threw the 55-yard touchdown to Marquise Brown. So without Brown, it's just kind of limiting Lamar's big playability through the passing game. But with him, if he's back, obviously Lamar's a smash play against the Jags this week. And Marquise Brown is a decent flex option. He's going to be boom or bust like he always is, like he has been all season. But against the Jags, he's probably a safer boom bet than a bust. The Broncos canceled practice yesterday after a staff member tested positive for COVID. Doesn't sound like they were worried about the players. I don't think anybody's been placed on a close contact list at all. It just sounds like it's a staffer in the Broncos organization. So they just canceled it out of an abundance of caution. It doesn't sound like they're worried at all or their game's in jeopardy. Ronald Jones, he fractured his finger on Sunday. So he got a pin put in, and he was looking like he was going to be questionable. It was the same procedure that Chris Godwin had done earlier. He got a pin put in his broken finger and he ended up missing a game. So Ronald Jones was looking questionable anyways, but then he was placed on the COVID IR list. Hopefully he's back for championship week because he gets to play the Detroit Lions. And if I win this week, I need Ronald Jones against the Detroit Lions in my championship game against the number 1 seed, the best team in the league. So I'm going to miss Ronald Jones this week. He didn't have that good of a matchup against Atlanta. So I have David Johnson in there in my flex in place of Ronald Jones. So I don't think I'm losing too much this week against a surprisingly good running defense in Atlanta. But next week, I need Ronald Jones back. I was able to grab Leonard Fournette. So if Ronald Jones is still to miss, I couldn't find if he was a close contact or if he's tested positive for COVID. I assume he's a close contact. That's what most of these people are. So if he is a close contact, he should be able to be back next week, and it gives him the week to rest with that pin put in his finger. Hopefully Ronald Jones is back for me against Detroit. We will move into the injury updates. Chase Edmonds didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday and is listed as questionable for the game. Kenyon Drake would get every single running back touch if Edmonds were to miss. Edmonds comes in a lot of passing game situations. If Edmonds is out, Kenyon Drake's going to be a 100% bell cow. I'm hoping for this because I am starting Kenyon Drake in my Reality Sports Online League. I have a tough choice. I'm starting him over Cam Akers. Like I talked about Tuesday, I just think Kenyon Drake's workload is more secure. I think he has higher touchdown upside than Cam Akers. But my models have them like back to back, so it's a really close call between Kenyon Drake and Cam Akers. I'm going Drake, especially if Edmonds is out. That would give me even more confidence in going with Kenyon Drake. Ezekiel Elliott is questionable for this week, and head coach Mike McCarthy said that he's probably slightly behind where he was last week. He's still expected to play, but have a backup ready just in case. I am a Zeke owner in my 10-team standard league. I have Tony Pollard, so I'm kind of hoping that Zeke just gets ruled out and they can roll Pollard out as the workhorse running back, and I can play Pollard instead. Zeke hasn't been that efficient. Pollard outscored him in fantasy last week, but if Zeke's in, I'm obviously going to stick with Zeke. Brandon Cooks is in for Week 15 against the Colts. Michael Thomas is out for Week 15 against the Chiefs, so the newly healthy Drew Brees will probably turn this into an Alvin Kamara show. We saw how involved Kamara was in the passing game with Brees. In the first half of the season, he hasn't been near as involved with Taysom Hill behind center, but Brees is back, Michael Thomas is out, and Alvin Kamara is probably going to end up being a top 5 play this week. Duke Johnson missed practice Thursday and Friday and is listed as questionable. David Johnson, who I am playing in my flex in my 10-team standard and my 12-team super flex because of Ronald Jones and Antonio Gibson both being out in those leagues respectively. David Johnson would be a full workhorse and could see more passing game if Duke Johnson misses. On top of that, it's interesting to note that the Colts defensive lineman DeForest Buckner missed Friday's practice after he injured his ankle in Thursday's practice, and he's listed as questionable. When the Colts didn't have Buckner in a couple weeks ago, that is the game that Derrick Henry ran all over them. Their defensive line is a lot less intimidating when DeForest Buckner is out. So if he is out and Duke Johnson is out, David Johnson becomes a smash top 15 play easily for me, which is good because I'm starting him either way in those two leagues. Deebo Samuel is out for this week, and it sounds like 49ers beat writers expect him to miss the rest of the season. This isn't that big of a surprise. It's been an unfortunate year for Deebo. I was really high on him coming into the season, and it has not panned out. I did own him in all 3 of my leagues to start the year. I was forced to drop him in my 2 redraft leagues. I still have him in the Reality Sports Dynasty style league, but obviously I can't play him. I did play him last week when he got hurt in that first play. Luckily, I was able to win. Sounds like I'm going to be without Deebo the rest of the season. Kenny Golladay is out again. I don't know why he's not on IR. It's truly beyond me. Why didn't they just place him on IR? I doubt he plays the rest of the season. It's just like Joe Mixon. Like, why aren't these organizations utilizing the IR spot? If these guys are going to be out for 8, 9, 10 weeks, just put them on IR. Kenny Galladay's teammate Matthew Stafford is a surprise questionable after getting back to limited practice on Friday. Hopefully Matthew Stafford is back out there. It's a great matchup against Tennessee. If you have Matthew Stafford in any two quarterback or super flex leagues like I do, you are hoping that Stafford is back. Um, Otherwise, you might be turning to some questionable decisions. James Conner is questionable, but hopefully you aren't planning to start James Conner, so hopefully this is irrelevant to you. Evan Engram is also questionable, and tight end Kyle Rudolph is out. Antonio Gibson was working out during practice on Friday, but he's considered doubtful for this week. That's not a big surprise. Like I said last week, turf toe is usually a multi-week injury in the NFL, so it's not surprising to see Antonio Gibson miss a couple weeks. It sounds like he might be back next week if he's already working out in some capacity, but I would be hesitant to start him in championship week coming off of a turf toe injury. If he re-aggravates that and then misses the rest of the game, it'd be hard to put him back in for week 16. Alex Smith is out and Dwayne Haskins is in for the Washington football team. It sounded like they were hopeful that Alex Smith would play all week. And then Friday he was just ruled out and Dwayne Haskins is back in. This really hurts Logan Thomas. I don't know that it makes that much of a difference to Terry McLaurin. He's just been I think Terry McLaurin was best with Case Keenum. With Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, it has not been that good. Devontae Parker is questionable. If he plays, all those Lynn Bowden sneaky plays can be canceled. I picked up Lynn Bowden in my 10-team standard league just in case one of my wide receivers went down. But if Devontae Parker is in, I wouldn't even play Lynn Bowden in a desperate situation. Mike Gesicki is also questionable for the Dolphins. And Julio Jones is out. Atlanta's offense outside of Calvin Ridley should not even be a consideration for you in your semifinal matchup. With Julio Jones out, Matt Ryan is terrible, which limits the whole offense. Todd Gurley is awful. He's injured. Obviously, he's touchdown reliant anyways. Don't start him. Hayden Hurst is unplayable. Yeah, Calvin Ridley is the only offensive piece that you should be starting from Atlanta. And we will move into our final Saturday show segment. It is Fringe Player Frenzy. This is where I'm going to talk about a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end who I think is a good start this week. Someone who's usually on the fringes of should I start him, should I sit him? Someone you didn't draft to be your top 5 player or anything, but someone who I think is a good play and should be in your lineups this week. My fringe play at quarterback is Baker Mayfield. Baker has thrown for 677 yards and 6 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, and he's been over 22 fantasy points for 3 games in a row. So he is cooking, but I'm seeing a lot of worry about the New York Giants defense, how they're a really tough defense on fantasy quarterbacks. But the defense is suddenly very wanting at the cornerback position. After one cornerback was placed on the COVID IR list, he went to a chiropractor appointment, I guess, and the chiropractor tested positive. So he was placed on the close contact list. He's not eligible to return until Monday. And then another starting cornerback missed last week's game with an injury, and he was already ruled out again this week. So it's not like the defense is the same defense that has been doing really well against fantasy quarterbacks. Baker's on fire. He's in prime time, and the Giants defense is hurting. Give me all the Baker this week. I am a Baker believer. I am starting him as a top 6 quarterback according to my models, and I would play him over Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, and Ryan Tannehill. It's going to be tough to trust Baker in your semifinal matchups, but the last 3 weeks he's been great, and my models like him again this week. My fringe play at running back is Jonathan Taylor. So Taylor was looking like a bust through much of the fantasy football season. People were drafting him as high as like the 3rd round in redraft leagues, and I wouldn't be shocked if those people that drafted him are the people that gave up on Taylor and sold him for pennies on the dollar, or pivoted and found a different option and didn't play Taylor for long stretches of the season. But that just means that a lot of teams weren't relying on Taylor through much of the regular season, and he should be a definite staple in your semifinal lineup. My models have him as a top 5 running back in all formats. Taylor is coming off of a 150-yard and 2 touchdown week against the Raiders, and that was the 2nd week in a row of over 100 rushing yards. 2 weeks ago, the opponent was the Houston Texans, who just so happens to be the Colts' opponent again this week. I would start Taylor as a clear running back 1 this week, and I would play him over James Robinson, David Montgomery, and Aaron Jones. So if you're loaded at running back and you're deciding between those guys and Jonathan Taylor as like your 2nd or 3rd running back, I would go Jonathan Taylor. My fringe play at wide receiver, T.Y. Hilton is the obvious pick here because just like Taylor, he had been terrible through the middle of the season. He had disappeared. He hadn't had a 100-yard receiving game since Andrew Luck was playing. But I think he's too obvious here. Who's not starting T.Y. Hilton after the last few weeks? So I think he's already in. So I'm not going to make him my fringe start at wide receiver. Instead, I'm going with my guy, Amari Cooper. I've seen a lot of people fading Cooper or hesitant to play him for too many weeks in a row now. I personally have played him every single week he's been active this season in my Reality Sports Online League, and I've been happy with his performance outside of the 2 weeks where he was playing with practice squad quarterbacks. He's clearly Andy Dalton's go to guy. He gets peppered with targets, and he looks like the only reliable offensive weapon on the entire team. He is more reliable than Zeke. He's more reliable than Gallup or CeeDee Lamb for sure. He's clearly Dalton's go to guy, like I said, and you might be worried about the 49ers defense. They're a solid defense historically, but they've given up the seventh most touchdowns to wide receivers in the league. My models like Cooper's chances to make his touchdown game streak 4 in a row. He's coming in with 3 games in a row of touchdowns, and I think he's going to make it 4. I'm starting Cooper as a low-end wide receiver 1, and I would play him over Adam Thielen, Mike Evans, and Robbie Anderson this week. And my fringe play at tight end is Irv Smith. Come take the Irv Smith ride with me. I am playing Irv Smith. So let's just go a little story time here. My 12-team Superflex League was looking set for the playoffs. I had a first-round bye. I had scored the highest points of the entire league throughout the season. And I had just a really bad bye week last week, which is weird because I'm not even playing. But it's a Superflex League. And I've been rolling with Josh Allen as my QB1, obviously. And then Matthew Stafford has been my QB2 most of the season. But Stafford gets hurt. I have Alex Smith, who he gets hurt. And I have Taysom Hill, who I've been playing the last couple weeks. And he made his last start because Drew Brees is back. So I had 4 quarterbacks on my roster. And it sounds like only one of them is going to be starting this week. Stafford is questionable now. So hopefully he comes back. And then I had Dallas Goedert as my tight end. He was tight end 1. He was a top 5 play for the last several weeks. And then he got a new quarterback who doesn't really rely on him near as much as the old crappy quarterback he had that panicked and needed to use Dallas Goedert all the time. So because of my quarterback woes, I'm looking like I'm going to start Gardner Minshew in my Superflex spot. Hope maybe Stafford's back, but my issue with Stafford is I'm worried that he's going to take a bad hit and then he's going to leave the game. So I might just roll with Gardner Minshew anyways and hope that, because look, I've been playing Stafford, I've been playing Taysom Hill, I've been playing Alex Smith in my Superflex spot to begin with, and I was still high point scorer because I have Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson and David Johnson, and then A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson. Like, my team is stacked outside of that one super flex spot. So I've been rolling with mediocrity in that spot anyway, so I might just stick with Gardner for safety because I don't want Stafford to get hurt and only get me 2 points and then leave the game early. So it's looking like I'm going with Gardner Minshew in my super flex spot. And then I can't trust Dallas Goedert really with Jalen Hurts, so I am going with Irv Smith in my tight end spot. This is because Kyle Rudolph is out again. We saw last week what Irv Smith can do when he was the only pass-catching tight end in town. He went for over 60 yards and a touchdown. And then on top of that, the Bears, who the Vikings are playing this week, rank 30th against fantasy tight ends. So the matchup is a dream come true. My models think Trubisky will keep the game close enough where Cousins continues to throw the ball. I don't think they're going to be up huge where they can just feed Dalvin Cook 30 carries and run the clock down. I think Trubisky's decent enough to keep it close. Cousins should continue to throw, and Irv Smith should be one of the benefactors of that. I would play Irv Smith over Dallas Goedert, which I am personally doing, over Evan Engram, and over Eric Ebron. So just to recap, my fringe play at quarterback is Baker Mayfield. My fringe play at running back is Jonathan Taylor. My fringe play at wide receiver is Amari Cooper. And my fringe start at tight end is Irv Smith. If you want to check out the Week 15 rankings for any players that I did not discuss today, I have full non-PPR, half PPR, standard, and flex rankings. I have different formats, like I said. All of those rankings are available for free on the website. It is thefantasyfootballactuary.com. If you want to watch a video version of this episode of the podcast or any future episodes, you can go to the YouTube channel. It is The Fantasy Football Actuary. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like the video and subscribe to help the podcast grow and reach more people. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it is at the FF Actuary. So good luck. Don't forget that there are a couple Saturday games today, so check your lineups, get those Saturday players out of the flex spot if you can, and leave yourself more flexibility for tomorrow's games. Enjoy the semifinal matchups, enjoy football, enjoy the holidays. I will be back here on Tuesday, and hopefully I am in 3 championship games. Until Tuesday, keep crunching those numbers.